All right. Sorry for that, being a few minutes late. We don't like doing that, but we're going to get this meeting underway. Representative Cook, if you could lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. If the members could introduce themselves.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm David Rowe from the 85th Legislative District. That includes Union, Snyder, Juniata, and Mifflin counties.
Representative Josh Kale, Beaver, Washington counties.
Jim Rigby, 71st, Cambria, Somerset counties.
Mike Armanini, 75th District, Elk, and parts of Clearfield County. Good afternoon, everyone.
From the 50th District, Greene County, parts of Washington County, where we invite you to come home, go big, and have a ball. I'm State Representative Bud Cook.
And we also have members joining us online. Right now we have Representative Smith joining us online. There will be members coming on and off as the hearing goes. You know the drill. If you have a question, just raise your hand or shoot me a text. Shooting me a text is probably the more effective way. Representative Rigby, thank you for having us here in your district. If you'd like to make a few opening remarks, and we'll get the hearing underway.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you to our testifiers for coming today and presenting before us. I want to thank St. Francis University for allowing us the opportunity to come up here and use their campus to have this hearing. It's nice not to have to travel 200 miles to a hearing. I'm enjoying today's hearing a lot. So I spoke earlier with the media. 21,000 miles in 9 months. That's a lot. That's a lot of ground we covered. That's what this policy committee does. So I was so happy to see us to be able to bring it here to my district. So Chairman Kell, I look forward to the dialogue, and I'll give it back to you.
Thank you, Representative, and thank you for hosting us here. You have been a very faithful member of the Policy Committee, has traveled a lot. We're happy to be here. It is a beautiful campus. Thank you to the university for allowing us to be here. We really appreciate you guys and helping us out with the location. You know, today we're here to talk about taxes and tax reform and how we can move this Commonwealth forward. And really, what we have come to grips with, what we have to come to grips with collectively in Harrisburg, Republicans and Democrats, is that we represent constituents of this Commonwealth. We don't represent the interest of the government. We represent the interest of our constituents back home. And we'd like to see a Commonwealth where our constituents get to keep more of their resources because they know how to spend it better than Harrisburg does. So today we're going to hear more about that from our experts that we have on the panel. We have one panel today, and we have three testifiers. We have Elizabeth Stell, Director of Policy at Commonwealth Foundation. Thank you for being here. Robert Sloan, owner of PJ's Tavern. Thank you for being here. And Ray Lenz, a citizen here in Cambria County. Thank you all for being here. Very much appreciated. Ms. Stell, the floor is yours.
Okay. Well, thank you again, Chairman Kale. Thank you, Representative Rigby, for hosting and all the committee members who took time today to come and learn a little bit more, have a discussion about this tax reform bill. Before I get into the specifics of House Bill 2388 and how it would benefit residents in Pennsylvania, I want to set the stage a little bit for where we are right now and the challenges that we face in Pennsylvania. Basically, why does it matter? Why are we even talking about tax cuts? Western Pennsylvania, as many of you know, is shrinking. According to the most recent census data, every county except Washington and Butler saw shrinking or stagnant population last year. That is a problem because shrinking populations means shrinking economies, means less opportunity. We understand how all of this works together. But it also means more tax burdens on fewer workers. Pennsylvania is also an aging state, and we have a silver tsunami coming in terms of our financial stability that's going to be especially challenging to overcome. So the question is, how do we reverse these tides? How do we make Pennsylvania more competitive? How do we attract more workers to our state? How do we overcome the baked-in demographics for the next 10, 20, 30 years? And the answer is growth. So how do we grow our economy? That's where the tax cuts come in. And just to also give you a little bit of context as to what's happening in the states around Pennsylvania and across the nation, states are cutting taxes. If you look at our neighbor to the west, Ohio, they reduced their personal income taxes last year. If you look to the east, to New Jersey, they're cutting business taxes. Almost everywhere you look, taxes are being reduced. In fact, over the past year, 14 states cut their personal income tax, and 6 states cut their business tax in 2024 alone. Now, that's on top of 2 years previously where tax cuts were the norm in states across our country. So if we aren't talking about reducing taxes, we're falling further behind. The status quo is not the status quo. So it's really a matter of urgency, and I'm very glad that we're talking about such a transformative bill. One more point of context for you. The last time we cut personal income taxes in Pennsylvania was the year I was born. So I won't get specific, but it's been a long time. So we're due. We are overdue. So what would that mean for a family here in Cambria County? We've calculated that the tax reduction package in House Bill 2388 would result in a household savings of $415.49 once these tax cuts are fully implemented for an entire year. So every year, a family would have that much more money in their pocket. These are numbers based on 2 adults and 2 children in the household, and those numbers vary based on what type of demographic you're looking at. As you know, our small businesses pay the personal income tax in Pennsylvania, so reducing personal income taxes is a small business tax cut. It's directed specifically at the people who are the engines of our economy. And I also want to note that a broad-based tax reduction is much better than any sort of targeted incentives we could provide to business. I know that oftentimes the governor and lawmakers like to laud what they're doing to attract certain industries to Pennsylvania, but broad-based taxes are far superior if your effort or if your goal is to grow the economy overall. And we also need to keep in mind that the average worker in Pennsylvania has seen their real weekly earnings decline by 5.5% since 2021. We all know that inflation is a factor, but that is all the more reason to pursue these tax cuts. And the one last thing I want to leave you with is both a warning and a note of hope. The warning is that we can grow out of our structural deficit, out of our financial difficulties, and make Pennsylvania more competitive if we also keep spending restrained, right? This is a 2-part puzzle. If we slash taxes, but then do out-of-control spending, we're going to end up in the exact same position that we are right now. So we need both. And because of your work in the legislature holding the line on taxes, we have seen some improvements in Pennsylvania. And I'll give you just one stat, but there are many others. Alex, Rich States, Poor States study every year that ranks the states by competitiveness. In 2010, Pennsylvania ranked 43rd. Not great. This year, we moved up to 35th. So not where I'd like us to be, obviously, but we're moving in the right direction, and that is because of the financial stewardship that many of the members on this committee have exhibited, and that is essential in addition to pushing through these tax cuts in House Bill 2388. If we are to make Pennsylvania competitive, if we are to open the state for business, as the governor says, and if we are to provide the same opportunities to my kids and future generations as we've all enjoyed in the Commonwealth. So thank you for your time, and I'd be happy to answer your questions.
Thank you. Mr. Sloan?
Members of the committee, thank you for giving me this opportunity to address this body with the critical concerns of Pennsylvania's taxpayers. I'm here before you to advocate the proposed tax decrease from 3.01 to 2.8. This change, though, at first glance, seems very modest. It holds significant potential to the benefit not only to families like mine, but also businesses and their employees across our great Commonwealth. Lowering the state income tax will have a positive ripple effect on Pennsylvania's economy. For families like mine, this reduction translates into more disposable income. This means more money to invest in our children's education, home improvements, and local businesses, just to name a few. By putting more money back into the hands of our residents, we stimulate consumer spending, which drives economic growth and strengthens our communities. From a business perspective, the tax cut will make Pennsylvania more attractive to potential investors and entrepreneurs. As a business owner, I know firsthand the impact taxes have on operational decisions. Lower taxes will allow us to reinvest in our companies, create more jobs, and foster innovation. In turn, this will draw more businesses to our state, enhancing our competitive edge and boosting overall economic prosperity. It is essential to recognize the current economic challenges we face. The inflation that has surged under the Biden administration has placed a tremendous burden on families and businesses alike. The rising cost of goods and services is squeezing household budgets, making it harder for families to make ends meet. For businesses, the increased costs of supplies and operations are eroding profit margins and stifling growth. I am no economist. In fact, I'm far from it. But I can tell you, in my world, where I work and the business I operate, a 40-pound box of chicken wings went from $82 in September to actually $117 today. This represents a 40.24% increase. Whether you want to call it price gouging or inflation, it's $35 more a case, and that fact remains. I would be happy to share invoices to validate this claim. In this context, the proposed tax cut is more critical now than ever. By reducing the state income tax, we can provide immediate relief to Pennsylvanians struggling with the impact of inflation. More disposable income means families can better cope with rising prices, and businesses can alleviate some of the financial pressures they face, allowing them to continue to invest and grow despite the challenging economic times. It is essential to address concerns regarding the state budget and revenue. While it's true that the tax cut will reduce the immediate revenue, the long-term benefits should not be overlooked. Increased consumer spending and business investments will generate more economic activity, which will help offset the initial decrease. Additionally, by attracting more businesses and residents, we will broaden our tax base, ensuring substantial revenue for the future. It is also important to consider the equity of this tax reduction. For lower and middle income families, even a small reduction in state income tax can reduce or can make a significant difference. It means more financial freedom and less strain on household budgets. This tax relief can help families like mine provide better opportunities for our children and improve our quality of life. For my business and staff, the benefits are equally compelling. Lower taxes mean I can afford to give my employees a raise. I can invest in their professional development, and I can enhance workplace benefits. This not only improves employee satisfaction, retention, but also boosts productivity and morale. When businesses thrive, their employees and families do too. In conclusion, reducing the state income tax from 3.01 to 2.8 is a step towards a more prosperous Pennsylvania. It will empower families, stimulate economic growth, and make our state more attractive to businesses. I urge the committee to support this proposal, considering the long-term benefits and potential for a brighter future for all Pennsylvanians. Thank you all for your time and consideration.
Mr. Lenz?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Joss, to my representative, Mr. Rigby, to other members, first of all, I want to say it's good to see you here. As an old St. Francis alumni, I hope you can go around and see this beautiful campus. This is a super school here in the mountains, so welcome. I represent the senior citizens. The good Lord has blessed me. I'm 91 years old and I volunteer in many activities. But seniors live on a fixed income. I repeat, seniors live on a fixed income. Senior citizens as a group, still productive citizens, we give back to the communities time, talent, and treasure. At this point in life, we have more time and more talent than we do treasure. We have paid into state taxes all our working days. Now, as retirees, we're still paying. Problem is, our income, for most of us, is fixed. We have no way to generate extra income. What's coming in dollar-wise is about the same as last year or the year before that. Cost of living has not remained the same. Prices are escalating on everything. Small increases in Social Security doesn't make a dent. Electricity is a necessity, and especially right now in our world, any savings would help. Extra dollars saved could be used to help with other household bills. Now, yesterday my friend was talking to a senior, and the senior said they couldn't put their air conditioning on because they didn't have the extra money. Think about that. Can't put your air conditioning on because they can't pay the electric bill. So this is why I think we definitely need this bill, 2388. And also, I looked at yesterday's paper. Penn Cambria, the school district that I'm in, is upping taxes. And also there was an article in about soaring home insurance rates are troubling. They're going up. And especially seniors don't drive that much anymore, long distances. But yet when they go to use the turnpike, and you know this, the turnpike keeps going up every year. Gas goes up. So the senior citizens definitely need a break. I thank you for being here. I thank you for doing what you're doing, taking care of the citizens, not the government. Take care of the citizens. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you, Mr. Lenz. And I do appreciate you also mentioning that a part of this package is also the gross receipt tax cut, the utility tax cuts. So I appreciate you bringing that up as well, because that is a critical element within.
I want to add one more thing.
Yes, sir. Floor is yours.
Before I came here, I work at the Crescent Food Pantry. And again, we have so many older citizens coming in, and they are just so pleased that we can help them out. Now, my food pantry is in great shape, and we really help them out. But so many of them are hurting, and they would be in bad shape if we didn't have our Crescent Food Pantry. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, and thank you for the work that you do. Representative Rigby.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you to our testifiers. Ms. Steele, you're talking about, changing the trend, turning things around, and what this could possibly do. Could we also possibly see the trend of those that are leaving, either A, staying or bringing some back to Pennsylvania as we continually see population decline because we haven't been competitive with other states, especially neighboring? In your professional opinion, is this something that you could see to create a trend to maybe start changing too?
Absolutely. When you look at migration trends, both people coming in and coming out of Pennsylvania, you see that generally speaking, the states where the most Pennsylvanians are moving, Texas, Florida, the Carolinas, they are either zero income tax, personal income tax states, or they, in North Carolina's case, are working on eliminating their personal income tax over time. So that's a trend that you cannot deny. And when we ask people in the polling, why are you thinking of leaving Pennsylvania? Or do you know someone who's left Pennsylvania and why did they leave? They consistently say it's the cost of living. The cost of living is too high. And the personal income tax and the gross receipts tax are two examples of cost of living. So it's very much tied to what is coming out of people's paychecks. So a proposal like this could get at the heart of our migration issue. It won't fix everything, but it's a big step in the right direction.
And it's a shame they're leaving because we got some of the most beautiful countryside here. So many folks that travel in to visit. talk about, you know, recreation and tourism and what we have in this state. And yet we've got our people that are here and are leaving because of their tax base. Mr. Sloan, for you, a business owner, a father, I mean, you have employees. This really hits you in a lot of different arenas. Is this something that's going to possibly benefit you? And I know the business end of it is something you're just getting into and worked with you a little bit on. But we can see an opportunity to increase wages or hire more people and offer more services. Is this something that you see down the road that could be beneficial to your business?
This is going to be very beneficial to my business from the time that this would be passed. And I'd have a couple hundred extra dollars a week that I would be able to give my loyal employees a raise. And that's big for them. Anybody that's working in the service industry. I mean, I'm a retired state worker. I get a pension every month from the Department of Corrections. These folks don't. So this is huge for my staff. And they work very hard. So that allows me to, as I said, when our small businesses thrive, the employees thrive, and then their families thrive. And this is what it's all about for me. My pension's going to stay the same, just like yours will. So, I mean, this is about, number one, our families always come first.
And I'm
then-
sure they'll
then my
appreciate
staff.
it too. And Ray, let me just say I'm thankful that I didn't have to speak after you today. I've been to a few Eagle Scout Awards presentations and a 150th celebration of Gallitzin, and for whatever reason, I always get to speak after Ray, and that's not the position you want. So, thank goodness, Ray, I didn't have to say anything after you, other than I will thank you for speaking and coming today. And, you know, when you talked about the air conditioner, not being able to turn it on, the electricity, and, you know, shame on me because I've never given that a thought. We just posted on my website yesterday shelters where people can go to get out of the heat, but I never gave it a thought that there's people that could stay at home but can't financially because they can't turn that air conditioner on. So they've got to remove themselves from their own property to go to a place that's cool. So they stay healthy. So thank you for bringing that to our attention and to light. And again, thank you for coming today. Thank you, Chairman.
Representative Rowe.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I got several questions, so just cut me off when you need to. I'm going to start with you, Ms. Dell. That's what we're here for. So I wanted a couple of questions based on your testimony. Thank you. It was very, very interesting. You referenced broad-based tax cuts versus targeted incentives. And, you know, targeted incentives look nice because you can say, look at this one great thing we did, but that means everybody else basically paid for it. So can you speak a little bit bigger to the value of broad-based versus targeted incentives?
Sure. So essentially, when we do targeted incentives, it's government picking winners and losers. It's government deciding which industries are worth, you know, a tax break, essentially. Whereas this proposal is tax breaks for everyone. And it's not about who has the best lobbyists or who has the most connections in Harrisburg. It's about lowering the tax base overall. It's about believing in people to innovate and to do what is best for them and their communities. We spend almost $2 billion in Pennsylvania on economic development incentives right now. Imagine what we could do if we shifted that revenue to tax cuts. In fact, that was something we proposed for years as we were talking about reducing the corporate net income tax, that we would shift all those dollars from economic development into a CNIT reduction and therefore be revenue neutral, but everybody would be getting a benefit versus selected businesses. So that is the way you grow an economy. And when you look at states that are competitive, you'll see that they have low, broad-based taxes, and they don't have as much of the targeted incentives. I know Governor Shapiro has talked about Ohio as a place that does a lot of this economic development, and we should do more. But you also have to look at Ohio's broad-based taxes. In many cases, they're lower. So I wrote a piece about this, urging the governor not to take what I think is the one bad thing that Ohio does, but to look at all the other good stuff that Ohio does, specifically in energy and some other areas. But it's really about fairness. This is really just about fairness. And so what The proposal before you is treating all Pennsylvanians fairly and equally. And, you know, like Representative Rigby said, there's some things you don't even think about, the struggles that your residents are having. Something like this benefits everyone to address, you know, whatever challenge they might be facing in their lives at that time.
You also referenced the need to pair tax cuts with responsible spending, which obviously that makes sense, right? You can't spend what you don't have unless you're the government. But paint the picture for us. If we do pursue these tax cuts, which I think are a fantastic idea, but our budget continues to exponentially increase the way it has over the last decade, what does that mean for us over the next decade?
Well, right now, with current tax revenue, projected tax revenue, and projected expenditures, we're looking at a structural deficit probably around 2026, depending on how you calculate things. So you're going to be asked to either slash the budget or to borrow or come up with some other way to balance the books in 2026. It's coming. So the only way out is to grow the economy. And that's what we're talking about. Yes, there is a revenue cost, I believe it's $3 billion once it's fully implemented, but you overcome that by growing the economy and having more investment in Pennsylvania. Without doing that, without growing the economy, you're going to continue to see the gap widen between revenues and expenditures because there's going to be pressure for more expenditures. Your long-term care, for instance, it's going up at double the rate of your revenue overall in the general fund. I mean, that's a recipe for California. It's not a recipe for success and prosperity. So that's a choice you're looking at. And what you do now, as you know, is going to set the stage for what you have to face in 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years.
And when you say grow our way out of the deficit, so paint that picture then for us.
Yeah, so the only way to responsibly get to a place where your expenditures are meeting your revenues is to somehow find a way for there to be more revenues. And the only way you do that is if your economy is growing. Right now, what we're seeing year after year is the state spending more than what it's taking in. We can do that for a little while because we have this balance from the avalanche of federal COVID funds. And we have a healthy rainy day fund, but that's only for emergencies. We shouldn't even be talking about tapping that unless something unexpected arises. So what we have to do is think about how do we generate more revenue, and the way you generate more revenue is to be more competitive, is to attract more investment, is to increase the incomes of Pennsylvanians. And that's what these tax cuts is all about. It's about investing in Pennsylvania.
And my last question for you, you referenced for Cambria County residents, what was it, $400 some that this would mean to?
$415.49 for a household of 4.
Okay.
It varies by county and it varies by makeup, but it's a substantial sum.
And is that for both the PIT reduction and the gross receipts?
That is for the whole package, yes.
What percentage of that $400-ish is the gross receipts versus the PIT change? Because I think the gross receipts is one of those things, everybody knows what their income taxes are, right?
Yes.
But some of these other taxes, ways the government sneakily takes your money, might fly under the radar, and I want people to know how relevant that is.
Yeah, so I do have the number for countywide savings for Cambria for the GRT. It's $12,889. We'll just call it $13 million, that you would see in savings once the GRT elimination is fully implemented. Again, that's just the GRT, that's just Cambria County, but it's a good chunk of the tax relief, whereas the personal income tax reduction for Cambria County is about $10.1 million. So for Cambria, in Cambria's case, you actually see more relief. And again, it varies by county, looking at the demographics, but both elements are extremely important.
So before the personal income tax even kicks in, Cambria County will have $12 million more for people to spend here, keep here, with just the gross receipts tax elimination. I think that's huge. I mean, I represent 4 rural counties, and $12 million I think would be significant for a lot of local business. But thank you, Ms. I've picked on you enough. Mr. Sloan, from the perspective of we've got a contrast here where you could have $12 million extra for residents in this community to be spending at businesses like yours, or on the reverse side, there's House Bill 1773 that the House Finance Committee held a hearing on a couple of months ago that would quadruple tax rates on small businesses. So instead of paying the 3.07 pass-through, you'd be paying 12%. So you told us earlier what a couple extra $100 a week would mean for you, would mean for your employees, would mean for your customers. What would the reverse be? If instead of getting a tax cut, you got your taxes quadrupled, what would that mean for your workers and your customers?
Extremely detrimental for for my business. And, I mean, we're already looking at raising prices with inflation. So there's, I mean, the other side of that, you're gonna see a lot of small businesses close. And that's where we're going to with that.
And I think that's the heartbreaking thing, because small businesses, I mean, Elizabeth mentioned it, are the backbone of Pennsylvania's economy. I mean, we've got some great large industries, and that's fantastic, but the small businesses employ half the people in the Commonwealth.
I donate a lot of money to our football team, our ambulance, volunteer fire companies, delivered water yesterday to all those people. And that's what your small businesses do here. I can't speak for anybody else's district. I can speak for Representative Rabies, that we take care of each other, and that's what we do with a lot of our profits. We take care of our community. So if you have more of these small businesses closing, it's just not gonna be good, because those firefighters, your EMS personnel, your football teams, they're still gonna need helmets. They're still gonna need equipment to run their calls. So you're still gonna be tasked with finding money for those people.
Well, thank you for all the work that you do, creating jobs, opportunity, and giving back to the community. Mr. Lenz, my last question for you. I used to be a township supervisor of a township that was formerly controlled by a different political party, and we were able to cut spending, set up capital reinvestment accounts, and got the township to a point where we were able to cut taxes twice and pass a tax rebate. Unfortunately, the township has flipped again, and the new board's first act was to raise taxes again. My local school district also recently flipped control and is now increasing taxes 3.5%. Yet again, and people like my parents, who live in the same township as I do, in the same school district, they're in their 70s and they're still working because people on fixed incomes can't meet these sort of constant increases in taxation, because your retirement income doesn't keep up with those sorts of things. So from an anecdotal perspective, you as a voice for the senior community, your friends in that community, what happens to those people who have contributed so much to their community over their lifetimes, now face ever increasing taxation, whether it's because the state incentivizes taxation like we've seen with the education bill, or simply irresponsible spending? What does that mean for you and your colleagues when these taxes continue to increase year over year?
Well, what happens is they have to use the little bit of savings they have. They don't get to go on trips and stuff. They have to use their savings to pay these bills. And again, coming back to that lady, she decided not to turn her air conditioning on. She suffered because she didn't have the money to pay for the electricity. So again, we're on fixed incomes, and it's a struggle for a lot of people.
We had a hearing earlier this week, and that was unfortunately a recurring theme. We heard testimony from a woman who stated that the choice was either air conditioning or heat or medication, and when you're forced to choose between those sorts of things, you're stuck between a rock and a hard place. So I want to thank you very much for being a voice here today. We're very grateful. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Cook.
Elizabeth, thanks so much for all your information. I mean, there's a lot of numbers and information, but I'm going to focus on your other two gentlemen there. And Mr. Sloan, I'm going to start with you. And I need to give a little background. You're talking to somebody up here who ran convenience stores on the retail side. And unfortunately, a lot of the general public does not understand what it takes to run the business. And I sit on the House floor and I take a look at my colleagues and I ask myself, I wonder how many of these people have ever had to make a payroll. I wonder how many of these people have ever had to dismiss an employee. And the retail mentality is you have to be rich, Mr. Sloan, because all we ever see you do is collect money. We don't see you doing the payroll. We don't see you doing the hiring and all that part. So we wanted to kind of set the stage and let you share the challenges that you go through at the retail level and the sacrifice and the hours and all that stuff that the general public and by most account, the majority of our colleagues in Harrisburg don't get to have that experience.
Thank you, Representative Cook. I'm very fortunate to have one of my staff members sitting behind me who works at
She
St.
was
Francis.
smiling while I was telling the story, by the way.
She works at St. Francis University, and I think she can attest, or she will as long as I'm in this room, that I work very, very hard. You know, as I mentioned earlier, I worked for the Department of Corrections for 24 years. I'm starting to think I was semi-employed or semi-retired for 24 years and then jumping into this venture last July. My days are 12 hours at least. I mean, my payroll, when you talk about payroll, I have to have it due every Monday. I stay at the bar and I get it done Sunday because I don't want any glitches to go through so my employees don't get paid. And as far as the ordering, running errands, making sure the place is clean, hiring, retaining, and ultimately firing some staff. I mean, there's a lot that goes into that. And it's a big balance. It's like a juggling act. And you said about dismissing an employee, it has to be done. I mean, you got to do it with your business in mind. There's got to be a classy way of doing that too. But I'm very, very thankful for the staff that I have. Very, very fortunate that I have 22 staff members that are excellent at everything that they do. And they make it look easy for customers. They make it look easy, you know, and they prop me up a lot. I've only been doing this for 11 months. And I'm glad that I do have one here sitting behind me. Kind of makes it a little bit easier too. But no, it's hard work. It's hard work. I don't show up just to collect money. I mean, that's far from it. If I could have just showed up and collected money, I wouldn't have worked for the state for all those years. I would have bought a business and done that. But I mean, it takes a lot of time away from. My daughter goes to a Catholic school in Evansburg. She's going into 7th grade, and her principal and I were talking last year, 9 months ago, and I said, I'd really like to volunteer at your school. So I went through all the clearance, did all that, and now I don't have any time to volunteer at her school. But I appreciate your question. Thank you.
We appreciate your contribution out there too, and I share with you when we first went to Harrisburg, we sat there and I explained to people that it was great being a legislator. I only had to work half days. And they looked at me and I said, yeah, 12 to 12. A half day is a short day, so we appreciate that. Mr. Lentz, experience versus intelligence. A lot of times staff will come to me or my team will come to me and say, well, we have this problem, how do we do it? And I'll say, do this, this, and this, go try it, come back and see me. And they'll come back like, you know, I'm a genius, and I have to explain them, no, it's not that I'm a genius, I wrecked it, that's why I know how to fix it.
Yeah.
So I have the second largest concentration of senior citizens in the 50th district. And very, very sensitive because I look at what your generation did for our generation. And it's always been front and center about that fixed income. And we at some point we, us legislators, government, need to address that. We've got to fix that. So I want to thank you for what you and your generation did and sharing your thoughts and any other comments that you'd like to make. We'd appreciate.
Thank you, sir. It's nice being here, and I appreciate your comment.
Representative Armanini.
Thank you, Chairman Gale, and thank you all for your testimonies. What a great panel to have here. Really gave us a true scenario of each sector that is being affected by so much of Pennsylvania failing and growing. You know, my first question, Mrs. Steele, you know, of course, industry. I come from the manufacturing sector before I got into politics. So we're trying to move Pennsylvania. You mentioned how the governor is tired of losing to Ohio. He's going to continue to lose because we're really not making the changes that we need in Pennsylvania. And it's so sad to think, one, we're sitting on the natural gas mecca of the world, and we cannot ship natural gas to the New England states because we can't get it through New England, through New York, or through New Jersey. What a disappointment. Talk about increasing revenue overnight no problem. And the other aspect, too, is, in our waste coal stockpiles, we're finding critical minerals, which we are almost becoming, the country now, besides China and India, who can supply these, that everything that we're using today has these minerals in. And we cannot move forward in Pennsylvania due to regulations where we have private companies ready to come into Pennsylvania, invest tens of millions of dollars in this new industry, but it has no movement. What is your perspective on that?
Yeah, I mean, regulations are hidden taxes. So, in a way, regulatory reform is tax reform. And I noted briefly in my written testimony, when you think about what can Pennsylvania do to be competitive, there's two things that come to mind. Remove the red tape and cut the taxes. Both things that the governor campaigned on, right? And we're going to keep reminding him about that. And when you look at regulation specifically, who's regulated the most? Well, those are your folks regulated by DEP, largely your energy sector, right? So there's a huge challenge there. And we're very pleased to see the legislature advancing lots of different types of regulatory reform approaches. I know the Senate has had a package of bills sitting in the House for over a year now, with different things such as a REINS Act, a version of the REINS Act, which says if a regulation is over a certain threshold, it has to go through special review, basically giving the legislature more power to control the regulatory burden that's being put on our energy producers. And that's not to say that this is a us versus them situation, not at all. What our agencies should be doing is helping our manufacturers, our energy producers, do what they do safely and with environmental stewardship. But too often, it's much easier for them just to say no. Just to say no, or not say anything at all. And then they have to follow up in 6 months and find out, oh, the answer is no. So that is certainly a part of making Pennsylvania competitive. I would really urge the committee to keep going with their work on regulatory reform. Pairing that with this type of broad-based tax reform is going to get a lot of attention. And you even heard the governor note about this in, I think, with Fairlife, when they were looking at moving a dairy to Pennsylvania. They said, oh, we couldn't get through the red tape fast enough. Now, if the governor's office can't get through the red tape fast enough, something is wrong. So absolutely, that needs to be a part of what we do to turn Pennsylvania around.
Well, thank you. And Mr. Sloan, ironically, this morning as I was reading through my, quote, Facebook email, there was a local establishment like yourself who must have experienced an irate customer complaining of the cost of chicken wings at his establishment. And, when he went on and how you addressed this, that just the increase in the chicken wings itself, and then he added in the taxes and, the utilities and wages and so forth, that all added up. And, he apologized that he had to raise the price for his chicken wings, but it really gave an excellent perspective to everyday citizen that this is what is really going on behind trying to run a small business in Pennsylvania. And we continue to hear this not only from bar owners, but from small specialty shops, throughout the Commonwealth, that we are not friendly to small business. It is almost, at sometimes I think, that the administration and urban politicians want rural Pennsylvania to fail because they know we do not always think their way. That's because we think the correct way. So, I commend you on your hard work, and, this is just something that we have to continue to work at because this is what is part of our communities. And like you said, because of your business, your established name is being put on the back of a minor league, little league jersey. And when someone is needing a fundraiser, they're coming to you to help the community. And that's one thing that we have in rural Pennsylvania is we are still community-based. And I have no idea why we are always being attacked for that. So, I thank you for everything, that you are doing to try and make that dream come true and keep it alive in rural Pennsylvania.
Thank you, sir.
And Mr. Lenz, 91? I just turned 61 on Friday. I'll do. You know, you're a prime example. You went to college here at St. Francis.
Yep.
You lived your life. You raised your family, and you retired right where you began. I'm a person like yourself there. I live 20 miles from where I grew up, and I'm proud of that. And I think that's such an opportunity that we cannot lose in Pennsylvania, but we have to continue to keep our small areas growing and prospering, because you're a prime example of everything that you've given back. You've worked hard, and now you're helping others, and I commend you. And Mr. Rigby, you're right. I would not want to have to talk after that gentleman, but, you know, thank you very much. It was a pleasure meeting you.
Thank you, sir. And if I might add a little comment, this gentleman comes from a great family. I know his father. His father is very active in veteran programs. His uncle was an outstanding man and built the business and always contributed back. So he has great genes, he is really a great citizen. I'm happy to say he's a friend of mine. Thank you.
Representative Kephart.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you all for being here today. I have the fortunate pleasure of representing Northern Cambria County. So part of that $12 million you mentioned on the grocery receipts tax will be benefiting the people I represent, which is great. You mentioned the REINS Act, and I can't help but touch upon this. So the last policy hearing I was at, Representative Smith's up in IUP, Punxsutawney, they mentioned that, and that piece of legislation there would be critical in Pennsylvania. When I ran, they literally asked me if I could name, the newspaper asked, name one piece of legislation you want to pass. That's the one. That would be huge. It holds people accountable. All it does is make us vote on the regulations that we're enacting, or Pennsylvania is enacting. I think that would be massive for Pennsylvania. But I want to, something in your testimony here, and 825,000 small businesses in Pennsylvania. You're saying that's netting $50 billion in net profits, correct? So if my math is correct, that means we're putting $135 million back into the economy if we cut this tax to 2.8%. And I think it's important that, basically my point here is highlighting that this tax is not just for, you could look at this as just an individual tax cut, and it is. But so many businesses are pass-through entities that pay the individual tax rate. They don't pay the corporate net income tax, which I think should come down as well. But I want to touch on Representative Rowe as well, what he said about we're going to have to cut spending when we do this. Currently, we're making about $800 million a year in interest off of the surplus money we have, according to the IFO. I don't want to see that go away either, because that's free money basically that we did, well, not free money, but stuff that we didn't really do that much for to get, besides having a surplus. Instead of $35 billion or $1 trillion in debt, we have a surplus of like, whatever, 14 billion or 12 billion, whatever it is. But for me personally, I would like to see this go further. There's a bill in the House by the whip, Tim O'Neill, to lower this to 2%. I think that'd be good as well, because I think there's lots of spending we could cut in Harrisburg. To tighten the belt a little bit, because if we have to take it from people like Mr. Sloan, and take it out of Cambria County and move it to Harrisburg, I don't really see how that's a benefit. I mean, so, what would do you think that this is a good first step, I'm assuming, but, what else can we do to help small businesses like Mr. Sloan's and other pass-through entities? What else can we do?
Lots of things. I love the way you're thinking. This is just the beginning. Doing a phase out entirely of the personal income tax might come next, or combining the different classes of personal income. I believe we have 7 categories in Pennsylvania, which just creates a lot of extra bookkeeping for our small businesses. So it's another way you could attack this problem. But I think what I hear most often when I am in the community, when I'm talking to lawmakers or other associations in Harrisburg about why it's hard to do business in Pennsylvania, it's usually the regs. It's usually the regs. So I would encourage you to keep pushing on other things like sunsetting regs, doing a thorough review of your administrative code, something Ohio recently did, to just start reducing the word count. We have 166,000 regulatory restrictions. These are, actually things a business or a person must do in Pennsylvania. That ranks us 12th. Those are 2022 numbers. So I think we're higher now because it doesn't factor in what our good neighbor to the west has done. But it's not one thing, right? It's a bunch of little things, and keep pushing further and further and further wherever you gain traction. And that's the way we do it. That's the way we've become slightly more competitive in the past 10 years, and that's why we will continue to, not associate Pennsylvania with, oh, that's the place that's really hard to do business anymore.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that. And, I would just say, always everybody says, oh, you got to cut spending, this and that. I would say, and as a toot to Appropriations Chair Representative Grove, I think we should be looking at some of these special funds that we have set up that we never, ever return to look at in Harrisburg. Basically, these are the funds, set up in restricted accounts that no one ever looks at again. They usually go to grant programs that most people don't know about. So if you're going to start, I would say by looking there to begin with would be a good idea. But anyhow,
Yeah.
I'm in agreement with Representative Rowe as well that this is for every business, not just the special carve-outs that, for instance, we recently passed in the Finance Committee for, one sector, one little business carve out, and it's like, hey, that's great and all, but like we should apply this to everybody in Pennsylvania, so it doesn't matter which business you're in. But I appreciate all you guys being here today.
Yeah, you could do a lot of ribbon cutting if you're giving a tax cut to every small business in your district. Just pointing that out.
Vice Chairman Eckert.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I apologize that I'm late. I was fortunately, unfortunately, the governor was in my district this morning, and I told him I have to leave because Chairman Kale and I need to go blow you up at a policy hearing. But in any event, I appreciate Representative Rigby for having us here. And if there's somebody who shows up to every policy hearing across the state, it's Jim Rigby. So it's nice that we finally do something in his neck of the woods. So, but in any event, so Mrs. Steele, I want to. Your counterparts have highlighted some great testimony as it pertains to some stats and regulations, and I'm always fascinated by maps. And your map on page 4 and 5, I think it's fascinating in the sense it shows where people are moving, right? Out migration and migration into the state. And it's always remarkable. Look, statistics say everything, and the stats pretty much show good tax policy, people vote with their feet. And good tax policy will demonstrate where people are moving. And it's interesting, if you look around our neighbors, especially to the east and the north, where tax policy like New York, New Jersey, Maryland is not the best. It's, in fact, problematic for businesses. People are moving from those states into Pennsylvania, but elsewhere as well. Pennsylvania has also got this problem where we have a governor and House Democrats who want to, they want to model what they're doing in those types of states. And it's pretty interesting to see where people are moving. And they're moving to states like Texas and the South where they have robust, very competitive tax policy. And when I say tax policy, it's either no tax or a very competitive tax, lower tax, where businesses are allowed to thrive and it benefits everybody, right? And I think looking at those maps, we have a governor who talks about he wants to be competitive with places like Ohio and elsewhere, but we need to be competitive in our region, and the trend is heading elsewhere, right? And I think Representative O'Neill and Chairman Kale here have put out a provision to make us more competitive. So what would, and I apologize, I know you talked a little bit about this before I got here, but the gross receipts tax is something that I think we talk about personal income tax. Everyone basically pays personal income tax. We passed the corporate net income tax bill last session to phase that down. but that's really targeting the big corporations, which is a good tax policy too to reduce that. But when we're talking about who pays taxes, small businesses, individuals, it's personal income tax, but the gross receipt tax is something that everybody pays, whether you have income or not, right? And that affects seniors, folks that are living on, on some type of assistance, whatever the case may be. That is a tax that everyone's going to realize. So, and to take a step back, gross receipts tax is the term we use for utility tax. Let's just call it what it is. It's a utility tax on your energy bill that we see every month. What kind of impact would that have? And I know you talked about it from a Cambria County perspective, but what real impact would that have to make us competitive and to improve our tax policy here in Pennsylvania?
Well, specifically, if you look statewide at what the impact of the gross receipts tax alone, the elimination of the gross receipts tax alone would mean for a household. Our calculations based on 2020 data, which is the most recent from the Department of Revenue, is $232.16. So that's your bang for your buck on the gross receipts tax alone across the board. And that not only is that a great thing in of itself, but the timing is really critical as we are debating things like new mandates on what type of energy we can produce, which will, if they go through, most certainly increase all of our energy bills. So giving people a break on their electricity bills now is great, but it could be even more critical if we move forward with some of what I believe is bad policy that's being contemplated in Pennsylvania.
And Mr. Sloan and Mr. Lentz, I mean, obviously there's people cost the most, right? Employees, those types of things obviously cost the most. But utilities are right there, probably next in line, right? What kind of impact would this have on your business personally? What eliminating or getting rid of the gross receipt tax and allowing you to prosper? What would you, from a business perspective or an individual's perspective, what would that mean for you guys?
Go ahead.
For me, I don't know. I don't have these statistics sitting in front of me. I mean, my electricity bill.
Anecdotally,
my electricity bill at the bar is $1,400 a month. So, gas bill is $600 a month. So, I mean, anytime that I can slash money off any of my bills, I can put it back into my building, put it back into my staff members. Staffing right now is so hard. It's hard to get people to work. And the people that I do get to work, you want to make sure that we can keep them around for a little bit.
Sure.
I mean, we're getting them ramp certified, every one of them. They're getting, so we're investing a little bit of money into them, so we want them to stay. But $1,400 a month for electricity and $600 for natural gas, that's just at my bar. I mean, my house is $200 a month, probably for both of them. And any reduction to that it's a win-win for a business owner and a citizen.
And all I can say is if the senior citizens get a special break on electricity, they could use those few extra dollars to buy a few extra things for their home. Maybe fruit or maybe even vitamins, maybe even medicines that they need. Again, quite a few seniors don't have enough money to pay for their meds and stuff. I know there's state programs, but still, drugs are very expensive for senior citizens, and almost all senior citizens need some kind of drugs.
Well, look, I think as House Republicans, our goal is to not say, okay, there's XYZ program you can apply for and fill out this arduous application. Our goal is to send the money back to the people to make their decisions for themselves. I'm all about the fruit, by the way. I come from the fruit belt in South Central Pennsylvania. So anytime people want to buy fruit, I'm cool with that. But in any event, it allows people to pay for the things that are important to them and not have to, apply for XYZ government program. We don't want to grow government. We want to make sure that people can spend the money they want to spend. And there's this misconception that businesses just are greedy and want to keep all this money. Mr. Sloan, I'm sure you're not going to put this money in your pocket. You're going to put it back in your employers, back in your business to invest in Pennsylvania. And that's what this is about. This is about putting more money in greedy people's pockets. It's about giving money back to people so that they can invest in their own businesses, in their communities, like Representative Armini said, to invest in things that matter to them, not what the government tells you have to invest them in, or what the government says you have to apply for to get money back for. So I appreciate you guys being here. Thank you for testifying before this hearing, and thanks for your insight and what you do for the community. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Any other questions before I ask a few? You have oh, you're good? Okay. If you'd hang with me for a minute, I want to just, walking into this building, I saw the name Charles Schwab at the bottom. And of course, he was Bethlehem Steel. And for a short time, he was with U.S. Steel. And then before that, Carnegie Steel, before it got wound up by J.P. Morgan. And I thought to myself, and this policy committee has been all over the Commonwealth. I think this is our 60th hearing. And Western Pennsylvania is my home. I'm a Pittsburgh kid. I grew up there. And we're talking about Pennsylvania being competitive. And we're talking about, where we're at and how we can get to a place. And I think to myself, the fact that we're not just competitive, but the fact that we're not dominant is governmental malpractice. It is governmental malpractice. And if there was a cause of action for that, and I'm an attorney, don't hold that against me, but if there was a cause of action for that, Harrisburg, over the course of the last 60 or 70 or how many years, would be in deep trouble. Growing up in Western Pennsylvania, the reason we had such industry wasn't just luck. It wasn't because Carnegie ended up just being there or Charles Schwab ended up being in the area. It was because we had coal mines in Fayette County. And it's because we had access to iron ore. And there was demand because we were close to the markets. There was energy sources. There's a workforce that was there. We had all of these different elements in Western Pennsylvania. And that created this manufacturing boom that we enjoyed, that brought jobs, that brought my ancestors to Western Pennsylvania. And then you look around the rest of the state, right? And I didn't have this type of awareness until really the last year and a half when we've gotten to travel. There are industries in every part of this Commonwealth. The natural resources we have. In northern Dauphin County, there's one of the largest potato farms in the country. And Pennsylvania used to be the top potato manufacturer, top producer in the country. We have, obviously, the oil industry started here, and we could still have more oil generation with shallow wells. The natural gas industry, we have that could be a lot more than it is. Refining was in Pennsylvania. Manufacturing, farming. I mean, we don't even talk about that, right? Farming, the dairy farms that we could have here. The finance industry, and of course the transportation industry, because we're so close to market and because of the steel. And Edgar Thomson, the famed U.S. Steel plant that's still there, was named after Pennsylvania Railroad's president. His name was Edgar Thomson. So Carnegie wanted to curry favor with him so he could build his rails, and that's what ended up happening. That's how it came about. We still have all of those elements. Yet every single one of these industries that I have spoken to is in decline in Pennsylvania and has been in decline in Pennsylvania. And you scratch your heads and you ask yourselves, like, how aren't we dominant? We shouldn't even be talking about being competitive. Being competitive ought to be a layup. That ought to be easy. How aren't we dominant with the location that we have, the access to population, access to demand, access to capital? We could talk about how investors would want to come here. And then you start looking at the problems in each of these industries. Each one of them, it really comes down to two separate things that we've talked to these individuals from around the Commonwealth. One is tax structure. Pennsylvania's tax structure is not competitive, and we're not going to be competitive until we change our tax structure. The second is a regulatory environment, our permitting process, the amount of regulations that we have, the things that we've built up over years. We still have the workforce. we still have the natural resources. We still have the access to capital. We still have the access to markets. I mean, the largest market in the world with the highest buying power capabilities is not very far away from the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. What we don't have is a Harrisburg that collectively understands what we have in this Commonwealth. And that's what we need to start driving. That's what we are driving as a House Republican caucus. So, Mr. Lenz, I promised there was a question at the end of this, and here's my question. I may go on to a couple more as well. Tell me a little bit about this region, about what you've seen over the course of the last 91 years, as far as the industry, as far as what it was like then, how it's gone, and why you think we are in the position we're in, and how do we come back out of it?
Well, sir, when I was young, we had coal mines in almost every town. In my town, we had 3 mines, and quite a few people worked there. We had the steel mills in Johnstown. Quite a few people went down there and worked. In Altoona, we had the railroad shops. People went down there. We had logging industries. We had farms here and around. This is a beautiful farming area. We had many big farms, and the Yonner family that served in the representative and also the House. They had big farming potato fields. Used to go down to Snyder's and down to different places and made potato chips. I don't even hear that we have anybody sending potatoes to make potato chips anymore. But we had all these industries. We have the railroad running through with the main line from Pittsburgh to Philadelphia. And so we had all these. And over the years, I've seen these all decline. I've seen these communities have thousands. Now we're down. And just like right now, volunteerism, back when I was young, I remember going to a fire call and there would be 40 guys. You had to wait your turn. Now, they're begging for volunteers to show up. A lot of the fire companies have to combine because they don't have enough. The people are moving out or they're not volunteering. So as the member mentioned about my generation, we were a generation of giving. This generation seems, what's in it for me, or give me something. So that's where I'm coming from. I've been blessed. In my many years, I've been blessed. But again, we need to take care of the older citizens and make our state better. And like you say, we have all the stuff here. We just have to knock out some of those regulations and get these industries back where they were.
And understanding this history and the natural resources that we have, it's created in me, and I hope other members as well, a renewed sense of optimism that it's still here. It's not as though we were in the whaling industry that's no longer relevant. It's not as though we were selling horses before cars and that industry tanked. There's still demand for the things that we made. And it was just growing up in Western Pennsylvania. I'm a Pittsburgh kid. I guess anybody west of Johnstown and south of Mercer would call themselves that, right? That's kind of how it works in Western Pennsylvania. But growing up there, it was just presumed that we're in decline, that it's not coming back, that you need to graduate high school, go to college, and leave town. And Mr. Sloan, you and I seem we're of the same generation. I'm not sure exactly what your age is. I'm not going to ask you either. But I am curious, how many of your peers did you see leave the region because there was an opportunity here, because they just couldn't find work here and went elsewhere?
On Friday, my class, Penn Cambria class in 1994, had our 30th class reunion at my bar. And that topic was brought up on how many people had moved and left this area. And out of a graduating class of 200, I think there was 202, 204, something in that area, half of them are gone. Half of them have moved. And I think a lot of it may have been college, moving going to college, meeting somebody there, and establishing their roots there. But about half of our, I do believe that as time goes for younger people, I think you'll see that rate's probably, you know, anyone that is less than 30 years, I'm sure that rate's a lot higher.
I just think it's incumbent upon us to realize as legislators that this Commonwealth is not in decline. We've just had a poor mindset in Harrisburg over the course of the last 70, 80 years. And I think we probably took a lot of things for granted. And we just assumed that the industries would always be here. We assumed that we had so much going for us that no one would ever leave. The industries wouldn't go somewhere else. And that surely wasn't the case. I know my grandfather used to take me through downtown Aliquippa all the time. It's where he was from. And there was a J&L steel mill there that employed 15,000 people. And he wouldn't talk about the mill that much. He did. He didn't work at the mill. He worked at a grocery. He owned a grocery store and a fruit market. Maybe he got some apples from Adams County or some peaches from Chambersburg or something like that. But he talked about all the different retail space that used to be downtown Aliquippa and how vibrant that small town was and how much pride people took in that. It was a congregation of people from all different backgrounds that could make a decent living. Taverns were there, restaurants, other things like that. And Miss Stell, I think this last question goes to you. It's the question, tell us a little bit about what we're seeing happen in real time. The states where companies are developing, where people are moving to, where there's real opportunities arising on a daily basis, and just some of the policy initiatives, the proactive nature that their state governments took, and how we could accomplish that here in the Commonwealth.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. There's a lot of hope. A few things could really change the trajectory in Pennsylvania if we are willing to fight for them. And I'll just reiterate what I said earlier about the amount of tax reductions that we're seeing in other states. I mean, it's the norm now. I've worked at the Confederation for a long time, and many years we'd get our January list of, okay, what state tax changes happened this year, and it'd be 2, 3, 5, slate tweaks to this one, or they combine these classes. Since the pandemic, it has been an onslaught of tax reductions across the country. It's not just red states, it's blue states too. And so that's what we're up against. But that's really good news because we have a lot of taxes to cut. So that's a great opportunity. And the other thing that I think Pennsylvania is going for is Pennsylvania is kind of like Kevin Bacon. Instead of 6 degrees of separation, I don't know if you've ever heard of this. Everybody knows Kevin Bacon through 6 people. Pennsylvania, it's like 3. If you get 3 people in a room, one of them probably has a connection to Pennsylvania. And so if you make an attractive place to come and raise a family, everybody has family in Pennsylvania. And I hear this all the time. People saying, well, now that I can work remote, I can work anywhere I want. Well, why don't I come back home? And guess what? If you have some of these good tax policies, you're going to make that decision a lot more attractive to people. So there's a lot of hope. I'm really pleased that this is a part of the discussion in Harrisburg, and looking forward to talking about the next round of tax reform in a year or two.
Yeah, there's a reason why there is a Steelers bar in every corner of the United States, right? It's because people have left Western Pennsylvania. And by the way, we love having your kids here. This is a very family-friendly policy hearing. Yeah, tax reform, right? Representative Eckert has his children here today. A lot of times I bring my children too, and I appreciate you being here. Appreciate all of you being here. Representative Rigby, if you'd like to give some brief closing remarks, and we'll close it out.
No, I just echo the same, Chairman. I thank our testifiers for coming today, giving us some insight. Ray, always a pleasure listening to your words of wisdom. We can have all the technology in the world, but if we don't have those that have experienced and those that have done it and seen it and can help guide us through the next era, we're lost. So we need to certainly take care of our seniors and learn from them. We're not going to find it all on the computer. And I thank you for your time. And to Bob, I'll be looking forward to stopping by PJ's and saying hi again with the wife. And Elizabeth, I thank you too. Again, thank you for coming to our beautiful county, our beautiful college, and we look forward to speaking with you all again. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Representative Rigby, and thank you again to the university for having us here. This facility is beautiful. The campus is beautiful. I'm looking forward to continue. Yes, sir. Mr. Lenz, the floor is yours.
His old home is up here, and the Franciscan friars live there, retirement. So if you get a chance, this road right here, just go up and go straight across the street, and you can park your car and go about 100 yards. You can go into the gardens, and you see the back of the place. It's a beautiful place to see. So Charlie Schwab did a lot for this community. He built the Catholic Church. He made different things. And so this is a beautiful, the golf course over there, if you're a golfer, it's for left-handers. And it's called Immigrant. And it's a beautiful course. You got to come up and play it sometime. But just to get a little history, there's a lot of history in this little community.
I appreciate that.
And Marie Stokes from Pittsburgh made St. Francis outstanding back in the 50s.
Okay. I'll definitely take that trip, and the work that Mr. Schwab put in, and Mr. Carnegie, and organizing Carnegie Steel. That's also what brought my family from the Mediterranean to come here initially, the immigrant to Western Pennsylvania. So it matters to me and our family history a lot. I think this was another hearing where we heard a lot of the same things in a different context with different testifiers, with people letting us know that really Harrisburg needs to get out of the way. And one thing I have learned as well in Harrisburg is elected officials, we love taking credit for things. And I was reflecting on this. It's this is such a layup for us because we don't even really need to do the hard work. We just need to get out of the way and let our constituents do the work, because people will invest here. People will come here, and people will want to thrive in Pennsylvania. We got to get Harrisburg out of the way so that our constituents can do that. So our next hearing is tomorrow, June 21st, for our 5th and final hearing on the historic tax cuts. That'll be in Allegheny County. Until then, this committee is adjourned. And with the testifiers, if we could get a couple pictures, we'd like that.